So, all right. So for the transition of all transitions from tariffs to polyamory, and which is, poly, amory. So that's talking about, like what we're seeing in the culture, so to speak, is a lot of discussion on relationships, which of course, you always have a discussion on relationship magazines, everything. We're talking about relationships, but polyamory, which, people consider to be a consensual relationship where a person will be with in a, not monogamy, but a relationship with multiple people. So, so you'll have, a woman and she'll have two guys and, they all know about each other and they're all good with the arrangement. So obviously, just from the traditional culture that we've seen, this, which is one of monogamy in the United States, this seems to some a little bit different, or to others crazy. So Tunde, I want to get from your standpoint, what stands out to you? And just for reference, there was a recent piece in the Wall Street Journal. We'll have that in the show notes talking about polyamorous relationships. And so I want to know, like from that piece, we can start with just kind of what stood out to you, or what you make out of reading these stories about, kind of these polyamorous relationships that were profiled.
My wife said I couldn't speak in this section of our show. No, then I told her that the article was in the Wall Street Journal. She said, "Okay."
Hey, there's a reason we chose the Wall Street Journal. This is a very buttoned up.
It's funny. I realized, as in a serious note, because I went in, I showed her the article and said, why don't we try something like this? And then I got slapped in the face. So I realized that I'm pretty boring compared to what a lot of people are doing. I was surprised to see that they're estimating as many as 22% of Americans engage in this type of behavior, which is 1% lower than the 23% of Americans who have a bachelor degree as their highest thing. I was like, okay, that's a lot of people. Yeah. Almost a quarter of the country. That's what I mean. That seems like a high number because,
hey, man, you don't know what's happening.
You and I are friends. I guess we never really sat down and had this conversation about how we live with our wives. But I'm assuming most people, not a quarter of the people I know, are sitting there that are married, bringing over somebody. That's what I mean. It's one thing.
Well, it's not necessarily. And not to get too down into the weeds, but it doesn't strike me as swinging, so to speak. It seems like
that's what I'm saying.
Have
you've got a relationship, so it's not cheating, right? It's cheating with consent, and that's what I mean. Like, maybe people are doing this and I'm just out of the loop, right? Like, I just haven't had a conversation with anyone I know that's married that's like, my side piece is showing up for dinner with my wife tonight.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like. Well, but the thing to me, actually, this, on one hand, this to me seems like one of those things where, one, we might be in denial. Or like we're just not paying attention, because this struck me as
maybe we're just not at the cool table, dude. Like,
well, no, I'm
there might be some stuff going on we don't know.
I'm saying we culturally, like the whole thing, because isn't this exactly? Doesn't the French president have a mistress and a wife? Like, this seems to be exactly that, and that's like in public view. Everything. This is or maybe it's the previous president, not the current one, or maybe the current one. I'm not. No, I'll express a little bit of doubt
with our politics here. I ain't trying to chase presidents in other countries.
Well, no, I'm not saying it to cast aspersions. I'm saying, like, no, I know. I think we've seen this, like, and we don't think much about it. I think one of the things that stood out to me in the article was that one of the people they profiled was a woman, and she had her husband and then she had her boyfriend. And it was in the boyfriend and the husband, they were cool. And, they weren't cool like they were together, but they were cool. Like, they knew the arrangement and everything like that. And so maybe this is something that we are aware of, but we kind of look past it, or we tend to, if you're not engaged in the lifestyle, you just think, oh, that's just other people. And there just may be more other people that happen. So you look at it from that standpoint, I'm like, okay, maybe it to your numbers, it may be more common than it seems like, because when I go to dinner, I don't see a bunch of threesome couples that seem to all just be together, so to speak. But one of the things that stood out to me, getting to the meat of the article, was just how in those relationships, people seem to have different roles. And so, like, you'd have the woman would have one husband or have her husband who was more of her emotional, and then the other guy was more of her, like that. That's not to say that he was a plaything, but just kind of like that was kind of the person she'd do more adventurous things with, go hiking and stuff like that. And so there seemed to be kind of a break between the roles of each person, which kind of reminded me of just regular friendship. Just like, okay, yeah, if I'm going to the bar, I got, certain friends I would hit up. And if I'm going to the library, I got other friends I would hit up or something like that, so it doesn't seem as crazy when you kind of look at the mechanics of how these things are happening, other than the fact that our society tends to hold up monogamy as the standard.
Yeah, no, and I think part of it is, it got me thinking. I wrote some notes here, so I'm gonna have a joke here first about just personality, because when I was reading the article, yeah, no, I was reading it, and I just realized, because when you're saying about it's interesting, because I just don't live like this. I'm pretty satisfied with the one person I'm with, meaning, not to get like right into details, but the bedroom stuff's fine for me, and then the companionship part is fine for me too. And that's what I realized, like you're saying, on a serious note. It was like some of these people, they really have their spouse is the one, they really have the relationship, they enjoy, they love. There's just something missing in the bedroom. So they got the side piece for that. And like you said, others, maybe their bedroom, maybe certain things are good, but they actually, there's a part of the emotional side that is not being satisfied by, let's say, the spouse. That maybe it's not negative enough that they want to get a divorce and leave. Maybe they enjoy, most of the time. But like you're saying, maybe if the spouse doesn't like, mountain climbing or mountain biking in the trails, but the side piece does, that just is another way to get an outlet and be happy, right? And fulfill that need. So that's kind of what I realized. I was like, yeah, I'm just not wired to want to go in that direction. At least the way my life and my brain has evolved. The other part I realized, I was joking in my head reading about this, like scheduling could make, I'm just quoting the article here, quote, scheduling can make a military planner sweat. More relationships mean more drama, from in-laws to breakups, not to mention the lack of sleep. And then it says, who has time for this? End quotes, and that's what I was thinking. Like, I'm so lazy and so content with being chill like a tortoise. I'd be too stressed out trying to manage more people. I'd be stressed out trying to manage schedules and time. And so it's just not for me. For some people, that might be.
I don't think that the suggestion here is that it's for everybody, though. I think kind of what we're talking about here is the fact that it may be different strokes for different folks, so to speak. And
I agree.
Actually, it's the opposite. Like what we normally see is the idea that monogamy should be for everyone. And so this kind of challenges that to say, okay, what is monogamy for everyone? Because some people apparently seem to do just fine not doing monogamy. I will say this, though. I can definitely see where, from a cultural standpoint, the idea of monogamy came from, because I look at these things and I'm like, these people must be very mature, because from just a societal standpoint, remember, a lot of the norms in society evolve from the idea of keeping things from just boiling over all the time. Like if you're in a village of 150 people, you can't have, one of the 10 commandments is about, not going after other people's, spouses, because just from like, you can't hold a band of 150 people together if everybody's going after each other's spouses. So you got to have a level of you got to have certain kind of norms that will allow a group to function together. And so to me, that's what I see monogamy as kind of serving in many respects more than anything. Most people, I don't know, could handle emotionally the intimate relationships foster jealousy. Things like that. So it seems like most people probably aren't going to be wired to do something like this, because I don't see how most people would be able to deal with the idea of, in an intimate relationship, they're quote unquote sharing. So it seems like monogamy kind of fits into that. But from what we're seeing here, maybe that's just, there are people who definitely this wouldn't be for everyone, but there are people who seemingly from a just kind of emotional makeup standpoint are able to deal with those emotions, or don't feel those emotions the same way that maybe many people would, where they'd be out here, like getting in fights and attacking people over something like this.
Yeah, I think maybe we should do our next show on this from Utah, and apparently we might be able to find some people that we could interview and ask them how that goes to be married to.
Hey man, if we go up and down the street, we should be able to find and 1 out of every 4.
Apparently, they're not as out in the open about it, but it's No, but you said something about the societal thing, and that got me thinking about just even discussions we've had, like on the book Sapiens, this idea of a real and imagined order. Yeah. And if, just for the audience, the book Sapiens talked about this from a cultural standpoint. So the real order would be something like physics, right? Like gravity. I throw a rock in the air, it's going to drop on the ground. That's kind of just the natural laws we're not going to affect those too much, right?
Yeah.
But
or like I need water and food and air to survive.
Yeah, to survive.
You know, like it's not a cultural thing.
Correct. So that's why it's called the real order. The imagined order would be things we spend a lot of time on the show talking about, like tariffs, right? Like things like the idea of systems, the
laws,
races,
religion,
caste systems, all that. The way we organize ourselves as people. To your point about laws, right? The way, in fact, I got to wear a seatbelt. That's an imagined order. Like, we weren't. That's not a natural law, right?
Driving on the right side of the road in the United States. Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. So as we're having the conversation, I kind of realized I wrote a note like. It's interesting because I started thinking about we're really still dealing with just the cultural influence that we've all had from the Victorian age. I mean, we're a British colony, right? Yeah. So a lot of the things of the Protestant version of Christianity, the way we marry, all that is a very Victorian age still influence on us. Yeah. And then that made me think further back. Well, it's actually all three Abrahamic religions, and that's why I'm glad you brought it up. In terms of even the 10 Commandments has things that says, 1 to 1. It don't cover thy neighbor's wife, but it didn't say don't cover his wives, or, only cover the third one. So it already gives us impression that, it's kind of like a 1-to-1 kind of mate situation. As opposed to, remember, we learned in Sapiens, there was a tribe, I don't remember where it was, if it was in South America or somewhere else. I think it was South America. Where they identified that the men and women the women kind of just had sex with all the men while she's pregnant, because the idea was that then no man knows which child in the village is his, and they just take care of all the kids. Yeah. And so to me, that's a different imagined order. That's something that we can't even, like you said about jealousy and all that. Imagine seeing your pregnant wife going there sleeping with a bunch of guys constantly. You'd be like, hold on. So it's interesting. Sorry, don't imagine that. But Taylor, I said I'm sorry. I didn't mean that personally. But don't ever listen to this one. I don't want to get a text. I don't want to get a text later.
Keep going, man. Keep going. Yeah. Stop digging.
I know it's not you. It's not him. But that's what I was thinking. I was like, so in our Abrahamic religions, the other thing I've noticed for a long time, think about how we all point fingers at each other, meaning the three main ones, Christians, Jews, and Muslims. But they're so similar. So if you think about it, if you look at the fundamentalists in all three religions, the people that practice what I would say the extreme, and I don't mean that negatively, I just mean they're fundamental in their beliefs. So if you look at Orthodox Jews, you'll never see a woman without a headscarf, right? We know that the Muslims, the moderate people wear a hijab, the extremes make the woman wear a burqa. And then you've got Christianity. I've never seen a nun's hair, right? A nun wear a habit, right? And really religious Christian women do usually cover their hair. So that tells me that, to your point about the 10 Commandments, there's something in the culture, in our imagined order, that started a long time ago that we've all carried to today, where generally it's one, when you marry, it's a man and a woman. But that doesn't mean, like you said, that naturally that's the way it's always been or the way it will be.
Yeah, that has certain benefits, I guess, from a societal standpoint or a cultural norm standpoint. But that's also looking at it from a particular culture, because we can look at other cultures where, and then if you study, just the way this happens, like you've seen cultures where the number of wives a man have will depend on how many women he can support, how many kids he can support, versus just 1-to-1. And this other thing. So it apparently, from a human culture standpoint, and which has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Ours has certain, the reason you can look to what's happening with our norms and say, okay, well, I understand why that's there. Right now, we're in a place in society where people are challenging that. And it's interesting to see, because to me, again, it's not necessarily thinking, okay, this is something for everybody, but that they can do it, or maybe they do it for a while and maybe they don't. Like, I think the other thing that I see with these things a lot of times is that people oftentimes with these type of social decisions or, kind of, okay, I'm going to go this way in the culture. A lot of times people assume that they're going to do it forever. Like, that's the other thing here is, like, somebody may be in a polyamorous situation now. That doesn't mean that they'll always be like that. Their sensibility may change. so to speak, or somebody in a monogamous situation, their sensibility may change. These things, because they're kind of what works for you, that may or may not change. Like your friend group when you're 20 might be different than your friend group when you're 40, in the same way that your tastes for relationships, so to speak. So I don't know. But to me, like I said, this is very distinct from my lifestyle. And as you've made the point that it's distinct from yours. So it piqued my interest in saying, okay, well, how do these people do this? You know what I'm saying? Because like the biggest hurdle I see is like, okay, well, yeah. So as you so artfully put it, seeing your wife go off with some other person would not strike me in a way that it would be very productive from a personal or a societal standpoint. But I don't know. I mean,
we're just two boring guys.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact we started this show talking about tariffs, it should be the proof to everybody listening that we ain't having that much fun.
It was because we started on tariffs that we probably had to lean this far for part two. So, but no, I think
I'm just saying it proves we're not having that much fun. I don't have that much time to have a side, not even a side piece. I guess a side piece that's not on the side that's involved. For me to do research and go down rabbit holes on the 1860 Tariff Act. Between
I think it's less that you don't have the time, and more that you don't have the inclination, because you got enough time to have a podcast in addition to your normal career. So the podcast is your mistress, is what it is basically.
Okay, you can't say that too loud.
But
give me a whole other can of worms. See.
On that note, I think we can wrap from there. We appreciate everyone for joining us on this episode of Call It Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review us, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. And until next time, I'm James Keys.
I'm Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk to you next time.